We're live here. It is Tuesday, another Rich Lieberman exclusive, and one of the reasons, among many, why you come here, because you're not going to get what I'm about to tell you. You're not going to get this in any of the media outlets, whether it's the Chronicle, whether it's various internet sites, certainly not KNBR. You're only going to get it here. And the degree to which this information I'm giving you has become so incredibly behind the scenes and so, shall we say, under the belt and so sophisticated in its missive is so unbelievable that you will know now what I know. And this we've talked about this before. All right, Rich, get to it. I'm going to get to it. This has to do. Let's start at the very, very beginning. Glen Kuiper is the brother, the younger brother of Dwayne Kuiper. Those of you who have been in a little rock for years, and the Kuiper machine, as I refer to it, is very, very powerful. Maybe not so much now, but it involves the three brothers. Glen Kuiper, Dwayne Kuiper, and Jeff Kuiper, the youngest of the three. Glen Kuiper, the brother of Dwayne Kuiper, was in the news. Not the kind of news that I'm sure he cared for. Maybe he didn't give a damn. But in May of last year, May of 2023, Glen Kuiper said the N word. I'm not going to, this is an adult channel. I could say that word makes me feel uncomfortable. You know it. It's a derogatory, it's a racial slur dealing with black people. And he said the N word. And apparently that wasn't the first time. He'd said it before. It was no accident. It was no, shall we say, poof, an accidental utterance. Far beyond that. He said it. And even if it had been an accident, it was a second accident. And even if he really didn't mean saying it, he would have apologized, clarified, damn near many, many, many minutes immediately than he did. And I don't care what interviews he's doing now. This is called a PR campaign, which I'm going to get to the nitty gritty. So he subsequently was fired by the Oakland A's with assistance from NBC Comcast, for which he broadcast Oakland A's games, right? That was May of 2023. So he was let go. In my book, from what I've heard, and this is not the aim of this story, good riddance, good riddance. Where this story is now, I reported late, shall we say, middle of summer, that there was a PR campaign, and I'm going to get to the specifics of that in a second, to somehow rehabilitate, Glen Kuiper. And it involves a whole bunch of people with collaboration from the Giants, quietly, not officially, the Giants, KNBR, the Chronicle, specifically Susan Slusser, who is the beat writer for the Chronicle, covers the Giants. Good friend of the Kuipers. She, of course, also covered the Oakland A's in the years when Glen Kuiper was doing the play-by-play broadcast for the A's, when he had his first kerfuffle. And subsequently, she left when Henry Schulman retired and became the lead beat writer for the Chronicle on the Giants. So let's just go forward here. I mentioned the KNBR, the Giants, Susan Slusser, the Chronicle, and let's not forget Marty Lurie. Marty Lurie who broadcasts the pregame show on KNBR, the flagship station for the San Francisco Giants. Had many times on Sundays, he had on Glen Kuiper. Yeah, that Glen Kuiper, who not once, but twice uttered the N word because it was an accident. Don't believe it. Don't believe it. But again, that's not the story here. The Kuiper glue, the Kuiper influence, and then again involves Glen, the guy that was fired, Dwayne, the broadcaster for the San Francisco Giants, older brother of Glen, and Jeff Kuiper, director of Giants cable broadcast for NBC Sports Bay Area. An entire, shall we say, family influence with help from the Giants, who at first were kind of, well, let's start a trial balloon. Let's just see how this evolves. So Marty Lurie, good buddy of Mr. Kuiper, Glen, started putting him on the air on Sundays. Mind you, didn't say anything about the incident which led to the firing of Mr. Kuiper. Then Kuiper does these little anecdotal stuff, interviews, very sanguine, benign, mostly talking about baseball. Then a friend of somebody else, in this case, Damon Bruce, who's trying himself to get back into media mainstream, he too was fired by 95.7 The Game about a year and a half ago. He all of a sudden has on Glen Kuiper. And I'm not going to plug the interview. You could go find it. It's not that I'm being petty. I'm not going to do any friendship or justice for Mr. Bruce, who took part in this little scheme to help rehabilitate part of the spider's web of folks and businesses and companies and a Major League Baseball team to help get this guy, in this instance, Glen Kuiper, back into business. But so he does an interview. He still has not fully explained what happened. And why, by the way. Not once did he utter the N word. He did it twice. He's got a history. I can imagine things when they happen accidentally one time, two times. No. Redact that. Not a second time. Not when you're dealing with a word of that magnitude in a negative phase. But back to, again, the original premise. The amount of folks in companies that have quietly, in the ground, have put forth this effort to get Glen Kuiper back into business is monumental. Not just that, the manner in which this has taken place, the degree of people involved that you don't know about until now, and it's flimsy, it's cheap, it's unethical, if you can even use that phrase. What bothers me about it is the manner in which it's been done too. It's kind of let's just put him on there, put him on the air in any way possible, and slowly ingratiate himself back into or onto the airwaves, which they've done. Sort of a clandestine effort vis-a-vis Slusser, not because she thought he was remorseful, not because she really did believe what he said. She was doing a favor. A favor. Did the Chronicle seem to ask her why she was writing that sympathetic article, which is basically monumental bullshit? Did she go deep in Kuiper and ask him, or his brother for that matter? His brother, who, by the way, Glen Kuiper, not Glen Kuiper. I knew I was going to make a mistake like that. Dwayne Kuiper, who broadcast for the Giants, who was thinking of retiring and told all of his friends in 2023 at the end of the 23 season, but stayed on. Why? Because he wanted to help his brother. He wanted to help brother Glen. And also another Kuiper that got involved, Jeff Kuiper, who directs the Giants broadcasts. He got involved and has tried in vain, by the way, in this regard, to get NBC Bay Area folks back onto the game of trying to help out brother Glen. Not so. And it ain't going to happen, in my opinion. If it does, well, I don't think it's going to happen. But let's go back to some of the other provocateurs. I mentioned Marty Lurie. Why would Marty Lurie have this guy on? Why would he do it? And why would he risk his own credibility, his own situational behavior, his own status as a pretty good mensch, a broadcaster? I've mentioned many a times over the years, I referred to Marty's shtick in a good way as chicken soup radio. I loved his interviews. I loved his interviews with Bruce Jenkins, who wrote for the Chronicle before he retired. Marty has issues, and guess he doesn't care about his legacy. Has this guy on? Okay, so that's another person. You got Slusser. You got the Chronicle. You got Marty Lurie. KNBR. He'll do anything these days to get ratings. They have no ratings, even with the Giants, which is a tragedy in and of itself. And of course, the 49ers. Look at the radio ratings. KNBR is dead last. They're even below the San Francisco School District. They're abhorrent. They have no talk show hosts worth even semi-listening to. I listen out of a guilty pleasure just to see how much shit they could fuck up, which they usually do. A morning show, which is a travesty, a midday show with Greg Papa and John, I'm a radio gypsy, Lund. Oh, by the way, Greg Papa, friend of Marty, friend of the Kuipers, took part in this too. Had on Glen Kuiper a few months back, speaking of trial balloons, as a favor to start the rehabilitation process. It was a disaster. There was no reaction. People were complaining, and they're certainly not going to put these people that complained on the air. Guess what? Since that one interview, he hasn't been back on, he being Glen Kuiper. So it involves them. KNBR, a no-go. The Chronicle, they've launched everybody. Damon Bruce, who, as I just indicated, trying to get himself back onto the terrestrial airwaves, put Kuiper on. Glen, to get his side of the story, my ass. It was a sacrosanct sugar interview, a kiss-ass interview. I'm not going to plug it, but it was bullshit. It was an aided and abetted effort. That's all it was. You're not trying to get to the bottom of it. There were no questions, follow-ups, what have you. He sat there and he let Glen Kuiper take part in this orchestrated campaign that involves all these people, all these institutions, NBC Bay Area, KNBR, the Chronicle. You folks didn't know about it. You know about it now. And there's two aspects, once again, to this whole campaign. And it indeed was a campaign. There hasn't been a whole lot of outcry other than various people complaining. But the manner in which this was done, they could have done something like this, fine. And by the way, folks, I'm all a forgiving kind of a person, although not on this. But the manner in which this was done, this clandestine effort based on, not because whether they thought the guy was right or wrong, they believed him. And even if they didn't, they sacrificed their own cred. They put into compromise mode their own cred, whatever that is, to enable him being Glen Kuiper, to go back on the air, not on television in this instance, or on NBC Bay Area, because they want nothing to do with this guy. They made their decision along with the A's at the time. The manner in which this was orchestrated is really, really pathetic. And various interviews, various conversations, various texts, various back and forths, I found out through my own research how this evolved, who was in the mix, who was responsible, and the very manner in which all these people and organizations who capitulated, who took part in this, the very fact, the very manner in which they obviously took part on this should tell you a whole lot of what their goal is, what their aim is. Oh, well, somebody told me, well, they don't really have an agenda. The hell they don't. They're helping out someone who has tentacles all over the sports media landscape. In this case, baseball. In this case, the Giants, who didn't object. They quietly didn't take part in this shenanigan effort. But believe me, if there was an ounce, a molecular opening where they thought, well, maybe Dwayne Kuiper is, or Glen Kuiper. Yeah, Kuipers. Too many Kuipers. If Glen Kuiper gets a sympathy nod, if there's no huge outcry, then maybe we can look the other way. That's not going to happen. I don't believe, because there are monumental powers that be that will not allow him to come back. Whether that's right or wrong, that's up to you. Everybody, again, deserves perhaps a second chance, but not a third chance. And not what this guy did. Somebody said to me, when this thing first happened, and I wasn't even aware that there was a first incident. I come to learn that there was one incident, another incident, which you all saw back in May of 23 in Kansas City when he's up there and he uttered that word. That was no accident. And again, you utter a word like that, you immediately, after a few, I don't know, second or two, you immediately say, folks, I just said something and I'm totally, I want that redacted. I'm sorry. It came out. Shows you a subconscious. Look that word up. But folks, that's not the reason why I am broadcasting here. And this is the kind of information, by me doing this, if I had influence in terms of working within that framework, obviously it's not in my best interest to mention this, but I'm here for you and I'm not trying to be sanctimonious. I'm just telling you a story that I've heard. I intimated about all this about a month and a half, 2 months ago. And it has come to my attention that this scheme put forth by all these characters and people, there was I don't want to say the word conspiracy. That's too lengthy. That's too heavy duty a word. Let's just say this, that all these folks took part in this campaign. Why? They wanted to help a friend out. That's how powerful, maybe not so much anymore, the Kuiper tentacles are. How this takes forth from now on, I don't know. But it should be out on the record. It should be out there. And it also, who knows? I've heard before this broadcast that maybe Marty was going to continue his relationship doing Sunday morning broadcasts on the air before Giants games. If that happens in the beginning of 2025, well, who knows? If there are repercussions in the television, the NBC Sports Bay Area, and I would not be surprised because the powers that be there, they understand. I'm almost certain that they know about this. If they don't, they do now or will know. And the various folks, media people taking part in this affair, like a Damon Bruce, who I guess wants to go back on terrestrial media to get himself back in the mainstream. Marty Lurie, who should know better, frankly. I like Marty. He's a little weird in certain areas, but he's a good guy on the whole. I think he does a good job, like his radio show. Susan Slusser, I am not a fan of. She could be a really good writer. She's there to report as a beat reporter to cover the Giants. And I don't think she covers them very well. I think she's more of a fangirl. I'm giving you my opinion. Just that, an opinion. I don't think she is a truly objective person, especially when it comes to the A's and Bob Melvin and people like that. And she comes over to cover the Giants. And for that matter, the entire Giants press corps, much like the 49ers, are a bunch of nothings, fanboys and a girl who are more interested in press box food and walking around the field and making themselves look lovely and all that. Meanwhile, covering the team, that's their job. Anyway, so Marty, Lurie, and KNBR, and all the people, buddy with Dwayne Kuiper and Jeff Kuiper to a lesser extreme. And of course, Dwayne Kuiper. So the future, we'll wait and see. On the other hand, news like this, you're not going to read in the Chronicle. You're not going to obviously hear about this at all on KNBR. The struggling last place, 15th in the market, their morning show. Look it up. 15th in the market. A cum that used to be gargantuan, now below 100,000. Used to be over 1 million. Cum, now under 100,000. Falling fast. The Titanic on 680 AM and 104.5 FM, which they fucked up, KFOG. All these people should be ashamed of themselves, conspiring to do what they, of course, couldn't do overtly. They had to do it behind the scenes. It needs to be put out there, and I just did for your consumption. Thanks for watching, and believe me, please, folks, do become a subscriber to my YouTube channel. Tell your friends, your enemies, your priest, your rabbi, your lawyer, your plumber, your doctor, and do, if you can, make a contribution on the Rich Lieberman YouTube and the Google page. Most especially, do make a contribution. Thanks for watching, and we will, as always, if all goes well, we'll see you later.